think I'm a replicant, don't you?
That was Sean Young in 1982. This is the same actress who starred with Harrison Ford in Blade Runner, lit up the screen with Kevin Costner in No Way Out, and even worked with Oliver Stone in Wall Street. By all accounts, she was supposed to be huge. But instead of becoming Hollywood royalty, Sean Young became the cautionary tale everyone whispered about. According to Hollywood lore, Sean Young once stormed the Warner Brothers lot in a homemade Catwoman suit, begging director Tim Burton to give her the role. Some called it fearless. Others called it desperate. Either way, the rumors accelerated her turn from rising star to yesterday's news. So what the heck happened to Sean Young? Let's rewind, because Sean Young's rise and fall is one of Hollywood's wildest stories. Before the Catwoman headlines and the rehab rumors, Sean Young was just a girl from Kentucky with ballet shoes and big ambitions. Born Mary Sean Young in 1959, she didn't grow up in some Hollywood dynasty. Her dad worked in TV, her mom in PR, but Sean's real passion was movement. She trained at Interlochen Arts Academy and later at the School of American Ballet in New York, with dreams of gracing the stage, not the silver screen. Sean's stunning looks landed her modeling gigs, and pretty soon casting directors noticed her too. But she wasn't just another pretty face. She had this sharp, unpredictable energy that made you wonder what she might do next. In 1980, she landed her film debut in Jane Austen in Manhattan. The movie wasn't a hit, but it cracked open the door, and a year later, Sean walked right through it with Stripes, the wild Bill Murray comedy packed with future stars. Her role was small, but she stood out. Among all the chaos, Sean brought this calm, almost mysterious presence, like she was in on the joke but never trying too hard. Hollywood took note. She wasn't a star yet, but she wasn't blending into the background either. Sean Young was learning the game fast, and everyone could sense she was only getting started. Then came the role that should have cemented her place in Hollywood history, Rachel in Blade Runner. In the groundbreaking 1982 sci-fi neo-noir film, Sean Young stepped onto Ridley Scott's set and transformed from comedy side character to the haunting, unforgettable replicant who stole scenes right out from under Harrison Ford. Her performance wasn't loud or flashy. It was all in the restrained balance, calm on the outside but fragile underneath. It was eerie, beautiful, and years later, critics would call it one of the most iconic sci-fi performances of all time. But here's the twist. As good as it was, Blade Runner failed to live up to the hype. Audiences didn't know what to make of it. And while the film later became a cult classic, the behind-the-scenes drama left scars. Rumors swirled about tension with Harrison Ford. Some said their on-screen chemistry wasn't exactly mirrored off-screen. Others whispered that Sean was, quote-unquote, difficult, a word that follows women in Hollywood like a curse. Ridley Scott praised her look and presence, but the gossip started to stick. And in an industry where one rumor can outweigh 10 performances, Sean Young's breakout moment came with a dangerous asterisk. If Blade Runner put Sean Young on the map, her next big swing nearly erased it. She joined the cast in David Lynch's 1984 sci-fi Dune, a movie that was hyped as the next Star Wars. The book had a cult following, the studio poured in money, and Sean was cast as Chani, Paul Atreides' love interest. On paper, it looked like the role that could make her a household name. But instead of a triumph, Dune became a disaster. The production was a mess. The editing made the story difficult to follow, and critics ripped it apart. Sean's character, so crucial in the novel, was sidelined, barely given screen time, and when the dust settled, the film flopped. For Sean, that was 2 major sci-fi films in a row that failed to meet box office expectations, even if both would later earn cult status. Then came redemption, No Way Out, the 1987 thriller. Finally, Sean had a role that let her shine outside of sci-fi. Starring opposite Kevin Costner, she played Susan Atwell, a woman caught in a deadly political love triangle. Critics praised her performance as bold and magnetic, and audiences agreed. The film was a hit, and for the first time, Sean Young wasn't just the pretty face in a futuristic movie. She was a leading lady. That same year, she even popped up in Oliver Stone's Wall Street. It was a small role, but still, she was starring alongside Michael Douglas and Charlie Sheen in one of the decade's defining films. By the late 80s, it looked like Sean had everything lined up: beauty, talent, and a resume full of heavyweight projects. From the outside, it seemed like she had finally made it. But behind closed doors, the whispers about her behavior were getting louder. Just when Sean Young's career seemed ready to hit the stratosphere, fate and a horse got in the way. She had been cast as Vicky Vale in Tim Burton's 1989 movie Batman, a role that could have launched her into blockbuster royalty. But during pre-production, she suffered an injury in a horseback riding accident. Warner Brothers replaced her with Kim Basinger, and just like that, her shot at a major franchise was gone. Most actors would have moved on quietly. Not Sean. When Batman Returns came around a few years later, she had her sights set on Catwoman. And instead of waiting for her agent to call, she showed up at the Warner Brothers lot in a homemade Catwoman costume. Depending on who tells the story, she either boldly marched into casting offices or left execs completely stunned. One version even claims Tim Burton literally hid under his desk to avoid her. Whether or not that detail is true, one thing's for sure: Hollywood never forgot it. Michelle Pfeiffer got the role, delivered one of the most iconic performances of the 90s, and Sean became the punchline. Overnight, she went from ambitious actress to unstable in the industry's eyes. And here's the thing about Hollywood. Once that label sticks, it's almost impossible to shake. Instead of being remembered for Blade Runner or No Way Out, Sean Young was suddenly the actress who dressed up as Catwoman. A single stunt became the story, and it would follow her for the rest of her career. But as damaging as that moment was, it wasn't the only storm she had to weather. In 1989, after starring with James Woods in The Boost, she was hit with a shocking $2 million lawsuit. Woods accused her of stalking him, filing a civil case that quickly became tabloid gold. Sean denied the claims, and the two eventually settled out of court, but the damage was already done. Suddenly, she wasn't being talked about as a talented actress. She was being painted as unstable. Then came Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, in 1994. The film was a massive box office hit, turning Jim Carrey into a superstar. Sean played Police Lieutenant Lois Einhorn, only for the movie to reveal her true secret identity in a shocking twist. Audiences loved it, but critics worried that Sean was just being used as the punchline. Yes, the movie made money, but it didn't boost her career. If anything, it gave Hollywood another excuse to sideline her. And through it all, the whispers about her personality kept getting louder. Directors and producers dropped hints in interviews, sometimes vague, sometimes outright cruel, that she was difficult or hard to work with. Sean herself later admitted, "What I didn't know in my early career was very good self-preservation skills. I didn't know how to censor myself at all." That honesty is refreshing, but in an industry run on fragile egos and silent deals, it cost her dearly. By now, Sean Young wasn't just fighting for roles. She was fighting against an image that Hollywood had already written for her, and to escape it, she made a bold move that would change her life entirely. By the late 90s, Sean Young had had enough. The lawsuits, the labels, the gossip, it all added up. So she did what few stars in her position would dare. She packed up and moved to Sedona, Arizona, where she married actor Robert Lujan and raised 2 sons, Rio and Quinn. But don't mistake that for retirement. Sean kept working, just not in the glossy, big-budget projects she'd once been promised. She popped up in the daytime soap The Young and the Restless, showed her comedy chops on Reno 911, and appeared in quirky indie films that gave her space to experiment. The A-list may have shut its doors, but Sean never stopped acting. Then came Celebrity Rehab with Dr. Drew in 2011. The editing painted her as detached and delusional, feeding into the very narrative she'd been fighting for decades. But if you looked past the reality TV drama, what you saw was a woman still clawing for understanding, still trying to be heard in an industry that tried to break her. And just when everyone thought she'd faded completely, she turned in a small but chilling performance in the 2013 indie horror film Jugface. No studio hype, no big campaign, just raw, unnerving work that reminded people Sean Young still had it. It wasn't a comeback in the Hollywood sense. There were no red carpets declaring her return, but there was survival. And for an actress who had been turned into a cautionary tale, survival was its own kind of victory. But Sean wasn't done rewriting her own story. In recent interviews, she's been brutally honest about what really went down in Hollywood. She flat out calls the industry predatory, a machine that chews up youth and spits it out once you're no longer shiny enough to sell. And if you think she's exaggerating, just look at her story. Cast in Blade Runner at 20, on the brink of superstardom in her 20s, and then branded difficult before she even hit 35. She admits her outspoken humor and sharp personality rubbed some leading men the wrong way. "I might have offended a couple of leading men along the way," she said, adding that it was never intentional. But in a business built on fragile egos, even a joke could cost you a career. Sean also points to bad management. For part of her career, her own mother acted as her manager, something she later called a disaster. With no real strategy, she was left unprotected when the gossip mills started turning. And yet, through it all, she's still standing. "I'm really glad that I survived whatever I was going through as a famous actress in my 20s and early 30s, she told People magazine. She's proud that she got to raise a family, keep working steadily, and never had to take another job outside of acting. For her, that's success. She even started writing a memoir, 300 pages so far, but admitted she got bored with the subject. "I could not focus on myself anymore," she laughed. That bluntness, that dark humor, that refusal to play by Hollywood's rules, it's exactly what made her unforgettable in the first place. Sean Young may not have conquered Hollywood the way people expected, but by surviving it and by telling the truth about what it's really like behind the scenes, she's carved out a different kind of legacy. When we look back on Sean Young, it's impossible not to see both sides of her story. On one hand, she gave us unforgettable roles: Rachel in Blade Runner, Susan in No Way Out. On the other hand, her name became shorthand for Hollywood gossip. The Catwoman costume, the lawsuit headlines, the difficult label that never seemed to go away. But here's the truth. Sean Young never stopped working. She never quit. Even when Hollywood tried to shove her into the shadows, she carved out her own path, raised a family, and kept acting on her own terms. In her own words, she's just grateful she survived an industry that's built to devour women the moment they step out of line. Maybe Sean Young never became the flawless A-list icon studios wanted her to be, but she became something harder, something messier, and maybe someone more interesting. A survivor who still makes people talk decades later. Because in the end, that's the real legacy. You don't forget Sean Young. You can debate her choices, laugh at the Catwoman stunt, or argue about her reputation. But you can't erase her. And that, in Hollywood, is its own kind of immortality.